God bless everyone. Today, I will share the extraordinary testimony of Emmanuel Fernandez, a young man whose life took a haunting turn that changed him forever. Swept into a dark, spiritual abyss, Emmanuel came face to face with terrifying figures that forced him to confront his deepest sins. What he saw and felt shook his soul to its core. Now I'm going to read his letter exactly as he wrote it, and together we'll uncover the truth of his sin and the unsettling path he walked. Prepare yourselves for a powerful journey, one that led Emmanuel away from Jesus, only to find the door to salvation opened once more, offering him a final chance to return. I had just graduated, wide-eyed and eager to dive into the entertainment industry, a world that seemed full of promise, excitement, and endless opportunities. It felt like stepping onto a stage where everything glittered with potential. I was ready to make a name for myself, driven by ambition and a desire to explore life beyond the boundaries I'd known. As I joined the bustling world of entertainment, I noticed quickly that my colleagues lived without any regard for God. They laughed off faith, and any mention of spirituality was treated like a joke. At first, I shrugged it off, thinking it was just part of the industry's culture, something I'd get used to. After all, I was here to succeed, to make something of myself, and I didn't want to stand out as different. But as the days turned into nights, and the nights into late hours spent at parties, bars, and after-hours gatherings, I began to drift further away from who I used to be. My life was now a carousel of late nights, loud music, endless drinks, and casual flings. The boundaries I had once held started to blur, and things I once swore I'd never do began to feel routine. It seemed that everything was about living in the moment, indulging without limits, pushing further into a lifestyle that felt both thrilling and hollow. The parties grew wilder, and with each late night, the line between right and wrong faded a little more. There was a nagging feeling in the back of my mind, a quiet voice that told me I was straying, but I silenced it, convincing myself that it was harmless. After all, everyone around me was doing the same. Yet deep down, the tension in my soul grew. My conscience, once sharp and clear, was now clouded, as if shrouded in a fog I couldn't shake. I knew I was wandering into dangerous territory, allowing the allure of my surroundings to overshadow the values I'd once held close. It was as if a darkness had begun to creep into my life, unnoticed at first, but now undeniably present, tightening its grip around me. I could feel myself being pulled deeper, as if caught in a current, but I didn't know how to stop. And as the inner struggle raged on, I had no idea just how much further this path would take me, into places I never dreamed possible. What I encountered next would be something I could never unsee or forget. It was an ordinary day, or so I thought, and work seemed to be going smoothly as my colleagues and I gathered in the office. But things took a sudden, unexpected turn. Gustavo, my boss, was known for his explosive temper. Everyone walked on eggshells around him, always cautious not to set him off. But that day, it seemed my luck ran out. A small, innocent remark about my paycheck slipped from my mouth, something I never intended to be taken the wrong way. Yet, the look in Gustavo's eyes changed instantly, a storm brewing just beneath the surface. Before I knew it, words were flying back and forth, and my attempts to calm him down were useless. The tension in the room became suffocating, and everyone else fell silent, frozen in fear as they watched our argument spiral out of control. Then, in an instant, everything exploded. Gustavo's rage reached a terrifying peak, and without warning, he lunged forward, shoving me with a force I never saw coming. Suddenly, I was falling. It felt surreal, as if time itself slowed down to a crawl, and I could feel each heartbeat thudding in my chest, each second stretching into eternity. As I fell, a sense of dread washed over me, and my mind flooded with images, my choices, my sins, every regret I had ever buried. I was face to face with the life I had lived, And in those fleeting moments, I felt the weight of every wrong turn pressing down on me. The ground rushed up to meet me, and just before impact, a profound realization gripped me. This could be the end. But when I hit the ground, something beyond the physical happened. I was no longer in the world I knew. Instead, I found myself in a realm that was far more real than anything I had ever experienced. A place where my body felt like a distant memory, and my soul stood raw and vulnerable. The world around me was a blur of shadows and strange sensations, as if I had crossed into another dimension, one where time and space no longer followed any rules I understood. I could feel a presence, a weight pressing on my spirit, as if every choice I had made, every moment of indulgence, was laid bare before me. I knew in that instant that I wasn't just standing in a strange place. I was standing at a threshold, and little did I know, I was about to face something far beyond my darkest fears. As I opened my eyes, the scene around me was beyond anything I had ever imagined. Flames stretched endlessly, casting a red and orange glow across a landscape filled with writhing, tormented souls. The air was thick with heat, choking, and the sound of wailing was constant, echoing from every corner. It hit me like a cold wave. This was hell, just as the Bible had warned. Every warning I had dismissed in life, every scripture I had ignored, now stood starkly before me. I was here, trapped in a place where every moment was saturated with anguish, regret, and a chilling awareness that this suffering was unending. Fear clawed at me, and I could feel a deep, piercing sorrow for having let myself drift so far from God. Around me, souls were racked with endless suffering. These were people who had once walked the earth, laughed, lived, and loved, now reduced to shadows of their former selves, consumed by regret that weighed heavier than any earthly pain. Their faces twisted in agony, each expression carrying a haunting realization that they had wasted their lives, turned away from God, and now found themselves trapped in this horrific place. It wasn't just physical suffering. It was an unbearable, soul-crushing torment that reached into the depths of the spirit. The regret was palpable, and in their hollow eyes, I could see the weight of choices left unrepented, of lives lived for fleeting pleasures rather than lasting purpose. But as I looked closer, I noticed something even more disturbing. Familiar melodies began to echo through the air, filling the darkness. Songs I once loved, tunes that had brought me joy, now twisted into instruments of torture. Michael Jackson's Thriller, Madonna's Like a Prayer, Metallica's Enter Sandman, and other songs from my life on earth played here, each note deepening the torment of those around me. The music, which once seemed harmless or even thrilling, now felt like chains, pulling souls deeper into agony, reminding them of the worldly distractions that had led them here. It was as if each melody drove home a bitter truth, that the pleasures they had chased had come with a cost. Watching the tortured souls around me, I realized that those of us who had lived for the allure of fame, success, and indulgence had ultimately sacrificed something priceless. But I had yet to grasp the full gravity of what lay ahead, as my journey through this place was only just beginning. The atmosphere of hell pressed in on me with a suffocating weight, an all-consuming heat that seemed to scorch not just my body, but my very soul. The air was thick, as if it were made of smoke and ashes, filling my lungs with each breath like fire. Shadows stretched far and wide, broken only by the occasional burst of flames that cast a flickering, eerie glow over the tortured souls that surrounded me. I could feel the darkness itself, as if it had a pulse, a living force that devoured every trace of hope. The oppressive heat clung to me, reminding me constantly that escape was impossible, that there was no relief from this agony. The sounds were relentless, each one adding to the torment that filled this abyss. Painful wails echoed from every direction, a chorus of suffering so intense that it tore at my mind. Familiar songs from my life on earth played faintly in the background, but twisted and distorted, each note a reminder of the life I had lived and the choices I had made. The melodies that once gave me comfort or excitement now sounded hollow, warped into tools of torment. They echoed through the endless darkness, mixing with the desperate cries of souls who seemed to be trapped in an endless nightmare. Each beat, each lyric that I recognized, was like a dagger that twisted in my chest, deepening the sense of regret that washed over me. But it wasn't just the heat or the sounds that weighed me down. It was the emotional weight of the place itself. The air was filled with something far heavier than physical suffering. It was thick with regret, sorrow, and a profound sense of wasted chances. Each spirit carried the anguish of knowing they had lived for temporary pleasures, only to find themselves lost here forever. The oppressive atmosphere clung to me, sinking into my bones, as I felt the despair of those around me merging with my own. I knew this was only the beginning, that I hadn't yet seen the full depth of this torment. What awaited me next would bring me face to face with truths I had tried to avoid, but there was no turning back now. Just when I thought the agony would consume me forever, a faint light broke through the overwhelming darkness. It was like a single gentle ray piercing through the thick shadows that surrounded me, and though it was soft, it was more powerful than anything I had ever felt. The light carried warmth, a warmth unlike the fire around me. This was different, pure and comforting, filling me with a sense of peace and hope that I hadn't felt in what seemed like an eternity. In that moment, I understood that this light was God's love reaching for me, cutting through the despair and offering a glimmer of mercy in the place I had thought was devoid of any. As I fixed my gaze on the light, it grew brighter, and through it, I saw him, Jesus, standing before me, his hand extended toward me. His presence was like nothing I could describe. There was both an overwhelming love in his eyes and a deep, serious warning. I felt that he saw every corner of my soul, every choice, every regret. He looked at me, not with condemnation, but with a deep sorrow for the path I had taken and a fierce determination to pull me back. He spoke words that resonated deep within me, urging me to turn fully toward God, to leave behind the life I had once chased so relentlessly. His words were gentle but carried a weight that told me this was my moment, a choice between eternal regret and a chance to return to the path I had once known. Overwhelmed by my remorse, I fell to my knees and prayed with everything in me, pleading for forgiveness and promising to turn my life around. I knew I could never walk the same path again. I committed myself to walking the narrow road, to forsaking the empty distractions of the world that had led me so far astray. And then, as if waking from a nightmare, I opened my eyes to find myself back in the physical world, my body bearing scars from the experience, my soul forever changed. Those scars became a reminder not just of the pain I endured, but of the grace I had been given. I began a new life, surrounded by those who shared my faith, grounded in a purpose to live according to God's will. Now, I feel compelled to share my story with others, to warn them of the subtle traps of temptation and worldly pleasures, of music and influences that seem harmless but pull us away from God. This journey has taught me that every choice matters, and I urge you too to choose wisely. There is more I have to tell, but this warning I know is the most important. I invite each of you to share your thoughts and opinions in the comments section below. I would love to hear how this testimony resonates with you, what insights it brings, or any experiences you may want to share. Let's create a space for open and heartfelt conversation, where we can support and learn from one another on our spiritual journeys.